Eunuchs can't grow beards. Everyone knows that. No balls, no beard. An exarch, on the other hand, an exarch of Ravenna no less, why, everyone knows he needs a beard. He represents the emperor. For all the power he wields, and this far from Constantinople, he might as well be the emperor. He must have a beard. No beard, no exarch. Everyone knows that. So when the exarch happens to be a eunuch, there's both a problem and an obvious solution. But it was a hot afternoon, going on evening. Eleutherius had got up to speak with his false beard tied in just the right place. Now it was slipping. Though it felt an age, he hadn't been speaking that long. It was sweat that had loosened the straps. In time to the movement of his jaw, the braided green silk was bobbing up and down 1/2 inch below jowly flesh. Dinner must be spoiled. Some of the old men in the room were swaying from tiredness and the heat. All the same, there was the emperor's birthday to be marked, and it was Eleutherius who was marking it. 2 good reasons for not daring to sit down, nor for escaping the invisible fog of stale sweat and stinking breath that filled the big dining room. This last didn't apply to Rodi. So long as he's not cutting purses, no one cares what a boy does, unless he's prettier than Rodi had so far turned out. No one looks at him. He had made short of it at the back of the audience. Beside him, sweltering in his abbot's robe, Cosmas had propped himself against one of the columns and fallen asleep. Rodi had known he'd finally do that. He had not missed the whispered translation from droned soporific Latin into Greek. No one else would miss Rodi. Slowly, 1/2 a step at a time, he backed away. He was behind another of the columns. He could still hear Eleutherius, but was out of sight. He looked round. The door for the serving slaves was open and unattended. Through the door was a small room where the courses would eventually be stacked for serving. From there, a staircase led to the kitchens on the ground floor of the fortified residency. The staircase didn't matter. What did matter was the serving room's window. A quick casing the day before had shown that it looked into just the right place in the central courtyard. Eleutherius was approaching first refill of the water clock. If the text wheedled out of Antony was being followed exactly, the speech had miles yet to go. The exarch had reached the emperor's coronation after the coup against wicked old Phocas. After another long sentence, he'd get to the ponderous joke about the pigeons in the imperial palace. At the pace he was going, he'd get to another refill of the clock, and half that again before he sat down to call for the first course of wine. Rodi peered around the column for a final check that all was in order. His heart skipped a beat. Where was Antony? He had not seen or heard the exarch's secretary leave through the big doors, but it was one of the doddery eunuchs now holding up the sheets of papyrus for the exarch to read. Where was Antony? When and why had he left his post? The whole staff was supposed to be in here. If Antony was missing, the risk was too great. Rodi would have to abort the mission. There would be another opportunity, but the serving door was open. 2 weeks he and Cosmas had been in Ravenna. His instructions were to get the dirt and make straight for Constantinople. If there was another opportunity, how long before it could be this good? Antony had mentioned a delivery the night before last. Except that Antony wasn't currently where he should be, and he might not have left the room. Everything was lined up for as smooth a mission as Rodi had planned. Far off in Constantinople, the Lord Treasurer Alaric would clap him on the back for the report he'd eventually make. Cosmas hadn't moved. No one else would miss Rodi. No one else seemed to have noticed him. He was only a boy, and not a pretty one. He made up his mind. A full step, and he was inside the serving room.